On this episode of Bermuda Boys, Jack and Mike continue their discussion of lost civilizations and the plausibility of Atlantis. Enjoy.
Hey, all right. Well, that was dramatic.
Wow, I really
Yeah.
feel like I'm in an Uncharted game or something.
So it was like a major movie production.
I
Sounds
know.
like wow. Well, okay. Uh, yeah. I don't even know how to begin now. I've lost my train of thought.
Well, my
That
name
was a
is
very
Mike.
dramatic entrance. Huh. Hey, Mike. Uh, how you doing?
I'm gonna get a new mic in December here.
Yeah. I unfortunately can't do that. I'm stuck with you.
Ha! Yeah, you better believe it.
I know it. I'm Jack, and this is Bermuda Boys. So welcome to
Boys
that.
from
Boys,
Bermuda.
we wear Bermuda shorts as often as we possibly can,
Hmm.
except for in the winter because it's too cold. So we wear Bermuda pants instead,
Hmm.
which are like Bermuda shorts, but they're longer.
And long woolen Bermuda underwear.
Yeah, woolen underwear. That sounds kind of scratchy there, Mike. I don't know about that.
Scratchy but warm.
Yep, got to keep the woolly mammoth warm. I think we got a great show lined up for us tonight. We're going to continue talking about what we were talking about on our last episode. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, you might want to go back and do that before coming back to this one. I don't know why you would listen to them out of sequence, but people are strange and they do weird things all the time. So go
Hmm.
back, listen to the first two episodes, and then come back to this one.
Hmm.
And they're not all going to be sequential episodes all the time, so don't get used to that. But you should probably listen in sequential order nonetheless. If you don't want to do that and you love chaos, then this is for you. But no, I think it's going to be a great show. We're gonna expand on the fact that we believe that human beings have had a cultured society for much longer than we actually know. There have been civilizations out there that have come and gone long before the ones that we know about have come and gone as well.
Hmm.
That the whole history that we know is incomplete. So we're going to expand on that today, and we're going to talk more about that. Mike has got so many notes about this, and
So many.
he's going to enlighten us and illuminate our brains on this whole subject.
All right. Well, we talked about last time the first book or books, I guess. One was unfinished that was written about Atlantis, the Critias and Timaeus by Plato,
Yeah.
which of course featured characters from Plato's real life that he kind of wrote in as fictional versions of his story. Um, well, we talked about Critias last time about how it gave the example of the ideal state and the ideal state's opposition to Atlantis to see how the ideal state interacted with its neighbors and whatnot. And I had a note that I didn't quite get to last time that I thought was pretty interesting, and I want your thoughts on this.
All
Uh,
right.
so in Plato's Republic, he sets almost like, well, I mean, it's a republic, so the people kind of are run by this group, much like the Roman Senate, kind of. It's not a demos like Athens was later, where all the people got their votes and whatnot. But
Right. Not the
his
full representation.
his version of the evil empire, so to speak, that these good idealized ancient Athenians are fighting is, of course, Atlantis, and you got Atlantis has semi-divine kings. They're the sons of Atlas, or Atlas and his numerous twin brothers. And all of these twins rule different tribes across the island of Atlantis, and they're all sons of Poseidon, right? So they're half
Yeah.
god, and their mother's some sort of nymph or naiad or something like that. So they're semi-divine beings. But he mentions at one point that these rulers get together and they make decisions by mutual agreement. They, not a vote, not majority rule, but actually it has to be a mutual consensus, like 100% unanimous.
Huh. And we all know that's never possible.
That's never possible.
Never
Do you,
possible.
Now, do you realize? I mean, like, I don't think I can stress enough how never possible that is. Like, it's a great ideal to have, but holy shit.
This is also not among men, though. I mean, they're only half human. I mean, they're demigods, so therefore, they have, I guess, the whole higher power among them to be able to agree better, I suppose.
Perhaps. So
I don't know, with like a better intellect, a higher insight in life, and whatnot. Maybe I don't know. I couldn't even fathom.
One of the things that he leads up to is, over the millennia that the civilization of Atlantis has lasted, the semi-divine ruling class, these twins and their descendants and stuff, they start marrying with the peasants of Atlantis, like the locals, and they start losing that god blood over the generations.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that affected their mutual decisions, but the thing that condemns them to getting sunk, their whole island getting sunk into the sea, is the fact that they get together with a proposal that all these nobles, right, that are they're slowly losing that divine or semi-divine lineage. But they do get together still. They're still the ruling class of this society. They get together. They talk over the plan to go and subjugate all of Europe and North Africa. Take ships from Atlantis and go subjugate and exact tribute from all the peoples of Europe and North Africa. And they actually reach a mutual consensus. They actually agree on doing that, which I think is what is Plato's way of sealing their doom, saying, look, every single one of those motherfuckers was in favor of this plan, therefore they were all evil. And that's kind of the justification for his sinking them.
That would make sense. I mean, yeah, but I don't know. It kind of like it harkens back to well, we're going to go back to the Bible again for this one. Sodom and Gomorrah. If you know the story about Sodom and Gomorrah, I believe most people do. The cities were so rife with evil, just despicable acts, I guess, as they're described in the Bible, which we would just describe as a Tuesday now. But it was just seen as so horrible. And God was going to smite these two cities, just completely level them. And I believe it's the same way with Atlantis and whatnot. It was kind of like this kind of story goes in with a lot of cultures in ancient times, that the gods would get angry. Even along the same lines as let's see, there were even angels that were coming down into Sodom and Gomorrah to lay with human beings.
That was pre-deluge in Genesis. That, back earlier in Genesis, the angels that were coming down to lay with human beings was
I thought
Nephilim,
that was Sodom and
right?
Gomorrah too, wasn't it? Yeah.
So angels went
I
down
could
to
have sworn
Sodom
I'd
and
read
Gomorrah,
something about
but
it.
they were going down to check out to see if there was any good people. Remember, Abraham like negotiated, like, oh, hey, you'll spare both cities if you can find like 5 good
Yeah.
men, right?
He had to get like his cousin Lot out of there,
Yeah.
and his family. But then Lot ended up, you know, sleeping with his daughters later on
Was
in
it
a
his
cave
daughter, his sister, something like
outside of
that?
the
That's
city.
messed up.
I don't know. The
Weird
Bible's kind of
stuff.
strange.
Yeah,
Like, it
weird
is.
stuff in there. But I figure there's a lesson there. I just haven't figured out yet, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think we all have. Uh, haven't. We all haven't figured it
Well,
out.
none of us have figured that one out yet.
But no, I think like a lot of cultures do have that type of just destruction story. So when it comes down to Atlantis, it's not far fetched that this could have been an actual event that could have happened, because a lot of cultures, ancient cultures, had a story like this. Just like when it comes down to like the Great Flood, and a lot of the Mesopotamian cultures and European cultures at that time, North African cultures, they all have stories about a great flood. So, you know, it all kind of ties in, but we can't find evidence of it. But you know, everybody's talking about it, and I don't feel like it's something that they would just make up, and another culture would come along and be like, you know what, I really like this culture's flood story. We're going to make it our own too. So when it comes down to the whole just destruction of civilizations in general by what would be deemed as gods, is kind of, you know, like they couldn't explain natural disasters and whatnot back then. So say Sodom and Gomorrah, for example, was destroyed by fire and brimstone from the sky, right? Who's to say they didn't get hit by a meteor? Or
Yeah.
whatnot. You know, they probably knew what volcanoes were, so I wouldn't think it would have been something like that. But just this, you know, huge fiery ball comes down from the sky and just destroys this town and outlying area. I could see them trying to explain that as like, well, God was angry and he just destroyed the place. Instead of it just being just a
And I mean,
smacked by a celeste or
in their perspective at the time, I mean, think about like what was it called, Mount Vesuvius, at Pompeii, yeah. So
Yeah.
if you're one of those little Roman people, or way back further when you were with like Sodom and Gomorrah, if you were one of those little Sodomers or Gomorrahers or whatever they're called, you know, running around, what's the difference in? Okay, so yeah. So what's the difference in how they felt? Like between the finger of God coming down with fire and brimstone versus a asteroid hitting, or you know, or
yeah,
even a
they
volcano, or like what
they
would
had
be
no
the
way to
functional
explain it.
difference? Yeah, you're still like screaming and running for your life, you know, at the
Yeah.
end of the day. There's
So like
nothing you can do
like
to
a
fight it.
hurricane.
It's not like a wolf where you can like, well, maybe if I run at it and I'm quick enough, maybe I could like take it down. No, there's no hope. You're not fighting a volcano. You just have
No.
to make peace with whatever God you see fit and say
And I
goodbye.
believe with Pompeii, they didn't have the chance to make that piece. From what I understand, that pyroclastic flow that moved in there moved in so fast. It pretty much just took out people right where they were standing.
And that just straight up sucks all the air out of your lungs, and it's
Yeah,
all
it's
that
like
ash just cuts everything down your esophagus and everything. Yeah.
it would have been a horrible way to go, but it would have been quick,
Mhm.
ish. But it really did provide us in our time now with a glimpse into Roman daily life that we wouldn't have been able to really figure out aside from what history they had left us. But we're actually able to get an actual picture of it and see like what these people were doing at that time.
Yeah.
As morbid as it is, it was very helpful to our understanding of what Roman daily life was like. So we don't get that chance with Atlantis because we don't know where it is. You know, we don't even know if it even existed. And there's a lot of other, like we were talking about, Göbekli Tepe. We don't know anything about their culture. There's that other one just outside of there, those Turkish caves. what were they called?
Well, there was Göbekli Tepe, and we talked about Çatalhöyük also. I
Yeah.
don't know if
Then
that's
there's
the one.
Darren Koyu. Darren Koyu was the underground caves that were hollowed out for some reason, and people like it held up to almost 20,000 people for a good amount of time.
Oh, wow.
And nobody knows why they were living underground.
Hmm. It
So
was
like
the
an entire,
humidity.
yeah, you go underground, it's always the same temperature all the time. So
Oh, yeah.
it's pretty good. I guess in like Turkey, you can probably get some pretty harsh winters, but
Mm-hmm.
the summers couldn't have been bad.
Mm-hmm.
But then that reminds me of like, okay, so maybe there's some situation that maybe they couldn't go out from underground, maybe some sort of like radioactive fallout or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes down to I forget what that's called too, but the Indian text,
Oh, Mahabharata, yeah.
where they go into battle on these flying machines or carpet type things that
Mm-hmm.
drop bombs that explode with the force of millions of suns.
Mm-hmm.
And there are actually places in northern India that show volcanic, or not volcanic, but like atomic glass, like
I think it's Pakistan now.
yeah,
Yeah.
areas that it looks like how it was when they would detonate the bombs out in you know
In the middle of
Nevada
the
and New
desert. Yeah,
Mexico,
yeah.
and that you would get the glass in the sand that would just be extremely heated and turn to glass.
Mm-hmm.
And they had evidence of that in where this text would have taken place in India.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe these people were going underground because they couldn't come out. It was like nuclear winter or something, or
Mm-hmm.
who knows? Maybe that's what caused our ice age was back then. Like we can't say that maybe a human, like we've been on this planet for what, 2.5 million years or so as Homo sapiens.
Oh, not as Homo sapiens. That's about 150, 200,000
I
Homo
mean, it's just
sapiens.
like upright walking creatures. It's been like
Yeah, something
2.5
like
million years or
2
so.
million, yeah.
But who's to say that we weren't? And I mean, just look at the course of evolution in the past 1,000 years with us as human beings. Our course of not just evolution, but intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we're hive-minded creatures, so we're not intelligent as just one individual. We carry the intelligence of all the individuals that came before us, and we keep perpetuating it until we just
Standing on
keep
the
getting
shoulders of
smarter and
giants.
smarter.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. Yeah, I think it's Richard Dawkins has that meme theory, I think it's called, where the way that we can replicate an idea and it can transmit almost like a virus just from person to person by seeing and hearing about a certain new task, like a certain type of stone tool or some other technology. But that's exponential because it can happen. You can come up with a new idea or hear someone else come up with a new idea and learn it thousands of times a year and just keep snowballing. So we see our
yeah.
technology is just going over,
It
yeah,
just
like you said, over the
it's
last
just
1,000 years, it's gone crazy.
it's like doubling every. I mean, just look at the last 150 years. I mean, we went from what 1903 being the first powered manned flight
Mm,
to landing on the moon
1967, right?
barely 60 something years later. Yeah,
69, some, I
in the
don't
span
remember.
of just 60 years,
Yeah,
went from just learning how to fly to landing on the moon.
I know.
And
That's so
before
crazy.
that, it was thousands of years of practically nothing. But I mean, if you actually break it down and actually look at it, technological advancements over the past 1,000, 2,000 years have been just as insane.
Mm,
It's just been on a different scale than what we understand. So who's to say that that hasn't happened before in the past?
mm-hmm.
That we reached the point of where we are now, say 15,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, because we've been here a long time. So we reached that point, but we as human beings, and I feel like we're on that same cycle right now, we reach a certain level and then we destroy ourselves.
Critical
and then it
mass.
starts back over again. So there we go, back into caves, back into, hunter-gatherer mode, and we start everything over. We forget what had happened before.
Mm-hmm.
And who's to say that hasn't happened?
Mm-hmm.
We find evidence of these cultures out there that possibly existed, that we have evidence of it, but we don't know anything about their culture because it could have just been lost, wiped off the face of the earth. And the same thing with Atlantis. These people could have been extremely advanced. They could have had flying vehicles, whatnot, who knows. Airplanes and, I don't know. Somehow destroyed it all. And over the course of, even with our civilization now, say New York City was to be abandoned overnight, within 10,000 years, it's barely going to be recognizable. The steel's going to be rusted away. The concrete's going to be weathered down.
Plants grow up like almost immediately. You have trees
Yeah,
poking through the sidewalk and everything.
and then when all the trees and debris from them dies, rots away, creates a level of soil, 10,000 years from now, New York City's just going to look like a hilly area that grew up, I guess, from where all the buildings just fell down and had stuff grow on them. It's going to be unrecognizable from what we see now. So there could have been massive cities 10, 20,000 years ago that we would never even know about now.
Yep.
It comes down to like the whole, bones thing. It's like dinosaurs were extremely plentiful in their time on the planet, but we only find a few pockets of areas around the planet where we can actually find their fossilized bones because the situations had to be perfect for their bones to fossilize and stay. Otherwise, they just disappear and go away, and we would have never found them. So it comes down to the same thing with that. I feel like I'm rambling now. I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm taking away from you. You come on back. You bring it on back.
well, we touched on a lot of stuff there. I'm gonna take us back to a couple of thoughts I had along the way there. There was talking about similarities to the Bible. You got Timaeus, the second book. So Critias comes first. We've talked about that one just about as much as I can talk about it. Timaeus is the second one. It's the one that's unfinished. That one, we were talking about Genesis earlier, and like Sodom and Gomorrah and Abraham and the flood and all of that sort of thing. Timaeus tells the account of the from the origin of time, origin of the universe, all the way up to the creation of men, or the mankind, or whatever you want to call it. But it's unfinished, so we don't know if it would have continued on into stuff, or if maybe it's not actually unfinished, and you're just supposed to read up to that point and then start reading Timaeus, or what the idea is there. But I think most people think it's unfinished.
Maybe he just wrote it like they wrote the last episode of The Sopranos, and it just cuts to black, and nobody knows what actually happened after that. You just make up your own speculation.
Maybe
that's just the way he was writing it.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Well, linking it into another link to Genesis is you got the creation of man in Timaeus, and then you've got this idea of these very highly civilized people with like divine origins and everything. I mean, Poseidon makes the central city with the rings and everything, and then they commit this unpardonable sin of, I guess, all being evil for whatever reason, and the gods destroy them, specifically with a flood. Well, shortly after
that flood aspect again.
Yeah, that flood aspect again. Well, it's not directly after the flood in the Bible, but you do have Moses come along, and he's like an archetypal lawgiver figure. And you have it's not directly after the sinking of Atlantis either, but the Greek guy who is in the story, the one who discovers this myth of Atlantis by going down to Egypt and and studying under a priest at Sais. This guy is Solon, who is known as the legendary archetypal Athenian lawgiver. So I don't know if there's a direct correlation there or a direct connection, but I don't know. There's something to do with you get a story of culture bringers coming and bringing you your way you do things, like your grain that you grow, your food that you eat, your houses that you make, whether you make armies in war or not, and all of these cultural elements, and then they somehow fail. They fall short in the Bible. What they're interbreeding between angels and man, and then
Yeah,
in
their
the Atlantis
wickedness.
story, yeah, their wickedness. In the Atlantis story, you've got the mutual decision to just like totally dominate and subjugate an entire, well, continent and a half, because it's the northern half of Africa and all of Europe, right? And
Yeah,
so then there's this big destruction, and then it leads to new things needing to be found, like this lawgiver. I mean, after a period of chaos, you're going to need someone to come along and say, "Hey, we need some laws in this in this wild, wild west of a
yeah.
post-apocalyptic Mad Max landscape."
You
Well,
can't have civilization without a code of laws.
no, no, you can't. That's another thing is the Atlanteans had their laws, according to the Critias account. They had their laws written on I think it was an orichalcum, or maybe it was a bronze, I don't remember, a big metal plaque out in the middle where everyone could read it. That links up similarly to the Code of Hammurabi from Iraq. There's a
Yeah,
king
or the
named,
Ten Commandments.
or the Ten Commandments, yep. There's a king in ancient Iraq, Mesopotamia, named Hammurabi, and he, after, according to the stele that he erected, stele is like a plaque, a big plaque out of stone.
Yeah,
He supposedly traveled all throughout his kingdom, keeping peace, making peace, probably with a big army. That's probably how he was able to manage that. But
you walk softly, carried a big stick.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
it.
yeah. And over time, he'd essentially like encountered enough conflicts between people that he'd resolved, that he'd kind of got his head straight, and got kind of a common universal code of ethics for behaving in his kingdom, and he posted that out in front of his palace in his capital city, so anyone could be a judge. Basically, they could just go over there, reference his stele,
Yeah,
and tell what law. Same with the Ten Commandments. You got these
yeah.
lawgivers that show up to.
And the Bible took a lot from Hammurabi on that as well. Um, I believe. I'm pretty sure they would have been around about the same time. So,
Hmm.
his whole laws and everything like that. I mean, that's pretty much the entire book of Leviticus. Uh,
Hmm.
the whole area was rife with culture, warring little, sparring little tribes, but they all kind of followed the same code of laws. And Hammurabi was the one that was able to like unify these people for the
Hmm.
most part, to bring them together with their laws. But anyway, I feel like I cut you off.
No, you actually reminded me of something else. Maybe if we have time, I'll go through some other research that I'd done a while back on comparisons between the semi-divine Sumerian kings list and the Apkallu from Acadia, and then the first few patriarchs during the antediluvian time in the Bible. But that's neither here nor there right now. Uh, I was
You digress.
I was digressing quite a bit there. I kind of, my mind, you started talking, and my mind just like off somewhere else.
Sorry. Yeah,
Oh,
I
it's
have that
all
effect on
good.
people.
It's all good.
Uh,
We mentioned so that uh was that flood, pre civilization givers, or pre diluvian civilization givers, flood, and then lawgiver coming out of that. We also mentioned volcanoes. Did we did not talk about the Minoan civilization and the Thera eruption last time, did we?
Oh no, we did not. The island of Crete and the surrounding area
Mm-hmm.
being just a caldera now. But there is actual theory that that could have been what Atlantis was based off of, because that sudden explosion of that volcano just blew their islands apart
Mm-hmm.
and filled it in with water.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a parallel to Atlantis.
I mean,
A lot of people
the
do believe
Minoans
it could
were
be.
the Minoans were seafarers. They traded in a lot of bronze. They were able to trade as far away as some people believe Wales, although it could have been just through you know, what is that called? You know, I traded with the person who traded with the person who traded with the person who traded with a Welsh guy, right? And
Yeah.
so it could have been through the grapevine, essentially, or whatever you want to call that. But that they were getting tin from over there in Wales and shipping it inside the Mediterranean, around the bottom of Spain, and all the way into to Crete there, and Minos, his palace there, Minos, and or Gnosis, I guess. But so the early civilization didn't actually have a language that we could necessarily translate or compare to any other language. It was a linear A script, and that's never been translated into a language. I mean, they can recognize a word or two here and there that are borrowed from other languages, but
Hmm.
yeah,
I did not
complete
know that.
language isolate.
I thought we understood the Minoans pretty well. I mean, we know that they had their bull gods and whatnot.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So we can understand their culture from their archaeology to the extent that you can understand without having a written history. All the written inscriptions are in either two scripts, either linear A or linear B. Think like a rough parallel to like Greek or Latin.
Yeah,
The linear A script is used to write a language that nobody's been able to translate yet because they can't find any parallels to other languages. Linear B seems to be related to another language in the area. I think it's related to Greek in some way or something like that. But they have been
that would
able to
make sense
translate that one.
because you got to think about like the Greek language had to come from somewhere.
Hmm.
Um, it's just like English derived from Germanic tribal languages,
Hmm.
uh, and then like Latin derived from Mediterranean languages coming together, and the same thing with Greek. Uh, all the Romance languages all come from like the Mediterranean areas,
Hmm.
and then all the guttural languages such as like English and German and Swedish and Russian being a mix of them, Arabic and the guttural languages. It's
Is
all
Russian
it's
mixed?
all very
Russian doesn't have any
fascinating.
Arabic in it.
I mean, like it's like a mix between like ancient, you know, like, you know what I mean, like the Middle Eastern languages, and I don't know. Russian is very different
It is,
from all the
yeah.
other guttural languages.
The Slavic
So
languages are kind of special. We'll call them special cousins of the European languages.
yeah,
Yeah. Same with
so
Finnish.
it's
It's kind of weird too.
um, and I was actually thinking about like not to go wildly off topic again because it is kind of bringing it back, but I was thinking about in Michigan we have this gigantic island just south of Canada and Lake Superior called Isle Royal, and on this island there is evidence of ancient copper mining, and
Mm-hmm.
the indigenous people at that time that the copper would have been mined had no use for it. They wouldn't have done anything with copper. Metallurgy was not something that they did or that we've found evidence of them doing. We don't know. They might have done it. But there's a theory that some sort of Mediterranean culture, like the Phoenicians or Minoans or what's the other one? I don't remember at this time, but
Oh,
you know,
Carthage.
pre-Greek, yeah, came to mine this copper-rich area of northern Michigan and, bring it back to Europe because,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they had copper in where they were, but they didn't have this as pure of copper as they could get out of northern Michigan. And northern Michigan is well known now for its, extensive copper mining, iron mining,
And
and
it
everything
comes
like
out
that.
natural copper, right? Like almost
Yeah,
pure
it's
elemental
almost
copper.
pure.
Yeah.
And they have found in ancient Mediterranean copper pieces the same, you know,
Isotopes.
the same, as would be found here in North America.
Hmm.
So there is a strong correlation and a lot of evidence suggesting that the ancient cultures, the ancient like pre-Greek, pre-Roman cultures were actually seafaring enough that they could make it all the way over here, and so far inland too. I mean,
Hey, there's another theory that the Egyptians came to, man, I want to say it's like Mississippi or something down there. The
yeah,
Mississippi
there's.
River, maybe.
I remember hearing like a whole theory about that, and that's the reason why like the Mississippian culture built their pyramids.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh, hey, the
uh,
Mississippian culture had a bunch of copper neck ornaments. I wonder how much
yeah,
I wonder how much they were trading up with the Great Lakes.
uh, uh, probably very, very much.
Yeah.
Uh, But yeah, well, there's that whole theory that there was this person in the Grand Canyon that found a whole bunch of Egyptian artifacts, but
Oh, yeah.
nobody's ever been able to find any evidence of that after that remarkable claim.
Mm-hmm.
So it's and then you have the lost tribes of Israel as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A lot of people speculate that the lost tribes of Israel, when they left, ended up coming to North America as well. But there's no evidence of that
Well, there's the Book
whatsoever.
of Mormon. Come on, that's evidence, my friend.
I, I didn't want to go down that road, but yeah.
I don't
I
mean to
mean,
make a jab at the Mormons.
I've always thought myself sometimes about just making some clay tablets and burying them out in the yard, and then having a vision show me where to dig them up in my own yard later on, and base an entire religion around it, and then get persecuted and move out to Utah. I've always dreamed about doing that myself. I've always
Mhm.
wanted to be a cult leader. So, uh, but I could just become a priest if I wanted to do that.
Hey, I mean,
Just
to
as
each their
easily.
own, right?
Yeah. Celibacy. That's what my life is now. So why not? Why not become a priest? Uh,
Mhm.
yeah. But I don't know. Like going back to the whole civilizations rising, disappearing, us having no idea about them whatsoever. There's actually been a pretty remarkable claim about an Indonesian civilization that may have been around up to almost 27,000 years ago. And I don't know if you've been following the news on this one lately, but
No way.
there is an archaeological site that they've been digging at that was discovered in probably I think it was like the late 1890s or
Hmm.
so, out in Indonesia, that is called Gunung Padang. And a lot of people believe that there is this pyramid there, and it to me just looks like a natural stone structure. But a lot of the a lot of archaeologists and whatnot have been out there, and it looks like a pyramid
Hmm.
that this is built on. It's terraced. It you know comes to a point at the top. The rocks don't look like they were necessarily made naturally. A lot of squares, what look like could possibly be, uh, you know, footprints for a structure and
Mhm.
whatnot. And dating like carbon dating of things that they found in this area show it coming to an age of about 20 to 27,000 years ago, which
Man.
would really, really change. Like it would be a massive change in the way that we view our history, because that would almost double Göbekli Tepe
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
age,
That would more than
and that
double.
would be,
Göbekli Tepe
yeah.
is 8,000 years old, I think.
I think at
Nine?
the oldest, most conservative guess, I think, puts it at 12,000
Oh, okay.
years ago. But that's the oldest within reason guess. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
for actual habitation, they believe it was around about 8 to 9,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, but 27,000 years, that's unfathomable amount
Mm-hmm.
of time. Because at that point in time, I mean, even 10,000 years ago with Göbekli Tepe, we still had people living in caves hunting woolly mammoths.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there was a certain culture that was able to build these, Neolithic monuments and whatnot. About 27,000 years ago, that it would have been unheard of. There would have been no, what's the word I'm looking for? No correlation to any other civilization out there. And this is on an island in Indonesia. And we all know that, 20 something thousand years ago, the sea levels were obviously a lot lower. There could have been a whole civilization built around that area, because the area now would be underwater, but at the time it probably would have been very, very fertile farmland,
Mm-hmm.
able to support a larger civilization with the amount of food
Mm-hmm.
that they could grow. But 27,000 years ago, we weren't farmers that we know of.
Mm-hmm.
So being, I don't know, it it is an outrageous claim that a lot of these archaeologists are really putting forward, and it is being scoffed at very much so in the scientific community of the age of this. People do agree that there has been settlements there, and what did I say it was? I forget the name of it already.
Indonesia.
Gunung Padang.
Oh, gonna yeah.
And they put a more conservative estimate on it of being around the around 45 BC. So, you know, but it clearly looks like a pyramid. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I can see that. I don't know if you've looked it up or not.
Yeah, it's got even like structures like there was a wall here, like square and rectangular and everything all over it, man.
Yeah, it
There, I
definitely looks man-made.
I saw a
I will give
video
it
of
that.
a dude that did oh man, what are those called? Like radar ground
Oh, like
penetrating
ground
radar or something.
penetrating radar.
Yeah, and he says he found a chamber down in there. He doesn't know if it's
Hmm.
full of a different kind of rock or if it's rock, like a cyst where it's open air and then it's got rock
Around it, yeah.
around it, or
Can't
what's going
tell.
on. But yeah,
I wonder if they've done like core samples, like any drilling or anything down into that hole to see
I don't know.
if it actually opens up or not. Because that would be interesting. I mean, if it actually is 27,000 years old, like some people are claiming,
Mm,
to be able to get that proven would completely rewrite our history as human beings as we know it. Because that
hmm
means that 27,000 years ago, we weren't the dumb, just hunter gatherer type of people that we thought we were. And if that's the case, there had to have been significant development of the human brain prior to when we thought there was.
hmm hmm
And that could mean that there could have been other cultures all over. I mean,
I don't believe art was ever found outside of Africa until something like 30 or 40,000 years ago when cave art started showing up in Europe and stuff.
Yeah.
So like any travelers who were able to leave Africa and go travel around, they weren't leaving any art. I've heard that some scholars and like anthropologists and stuff think that they may not have actually had the ability to think conceptually in order to conceive of art. But then that would beg the question of how they're doing art back in Africa.
Yeah.
I mean,
And you also gotta factor in that there was multiple different species of humans at that time. We had the
Denisovans, yeah,
Denisovans, yeah, all right. And then we had
Neanderthals.
Neanderthals, and we had down in the Indonesian area a completely different type of breed of human going on down there as well around that time.
The hobbits.
So, yeah, they were much smaller in stature and everything like that. So we don't know. I mean, if this Gunung Padang is 27,000 years old, that would place it not as human beings as we know them now, not as Homo sapiens at least, but as I can't remember the name of what they were, but yeah, like the little hobbit guys that you're
Homo
that you're describing.
floresiensis.
Yeah, it would have been them that would have built these.
Damn, no way.
Yeah, because it would have fallen during that time period that they were there. They're now extinct,
Yeah.
but the same thing with like Neanderthals and the ones that branched out into like Eastern Russia and Mongolian area and whatnot. Well, we have evidence of like African civilizations that have come and gone that would have been different than Homo sapiens as well, because what we regard as Homo sapiens obviously are what we are now. And we've only been here as Homo sapiens, like you said, like 45,000 years or so.
Homo sapiens was we have two subspecies. We have Homo sapiens sapiens and Homo sapiens the elder, or Idaltu. Homo sapiens Idaltu goes back 200,000 years. Homo sapiens sapiens seems to go back only about 150,000 years.
All right. So we've been around a long time. And like I profited earlier,
Proffered, I think is
looking
what you
for
mean.
there.
Yeah, caught me off guard there. I'm like, what is he talking about? Was he
Yeah.
predicting something?
Well, yeah, no, not necessarily. But no, like I proffered earlier, that the amazing intellectual leaps we have taken in the past 1,000 years, leading up to where we are now, is a very small speck of time compared to how long we've actually been on this planet. And it kind of does lend credence to the whole fact that we could have just been doing these cycles for hundreds of thousands of years. We can get so advanced since the time of Jesus to now, in 1,000, 2,000 years worth of time. Who's to say we haven't done that many, many, many times in the past?
Ah, shit. Dude, even look at, okay, so at the time of Jesus, we're talking, that was Julius Caesar. That was some of the heights of the Roman military success, Roman Empire's military success. Well, Republic at the time, I suppose, right? Wasn't it? Anyways,
I mean, they controlled the entire Judean area. I mean,
well, almost the whole Mediterranean, including down into northern Africa. But yeah, then look, just 1,000 years later after that, what are you in? Like the Dark Ages. You're sitting in like the Norman conquest of England, just like literally like a doomsday where they just come in and subjugate the entire people of England. You've got Charlemagne rocking around the fucking well, not Charlemagne himself, but his
at the same time,
Vikings and shit like that.
As we think of the Middle Ages and everything, the Dark Ages, at the same time that's going on in Italy, we've got the Renaissance.
Well, the Renaissance was 1500. That was
It
about.
like started in like the 1300s or so, and then just really started to get moving around, like
Oh,
14, 1500.
it started a little earlier than I thought. Damn.
But yeah, like the Dark Ages it ran from like what 500 to what they would consider maybe like 1200, 1300.
That sounds about right.
But during that time, it wasn't necessarily all just dark and gloom and shit. I mean, there was still a lot of
There was Black
intellectual
Plague
people out there.
too.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely factored into a lot of cultural loss and a lot of intelligence loss. I mean, you're losing huge swaths of population.
Hmm.
You're going to be losing a lot of intelligence that can be passed on to next generations and whatnot.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that definitely put a damper on things. So if like that brings up a good thing, like if say plague did not occur, how more advanced would we be now? Like,
Yeah. If we didn't have the Dark Ages like at all, or just
yeah,
the Black Plague.
or religion for that matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, religion has been the main
Oh, hey,
stopper of science for the longest amount of time.
have you
It
heard of
just
the
is.
Islamic Golden Age? Just before
Um,
the Renaissance kicked off, while the Dark
yeah,
Ages in Europe was going on, the spread of Islam happened in kind of some violent and bloody conquests across North Africa into southern Spain, throughout
yeah,
the Middle East. But yeah, shortly after the conquest, like the actual bloody part, they all settled down, started appointing scholars and scientists and mathematicians, and they start translating all of these ancient Greek texts. Right? They don't have any plagues across their Muslim empire, right? They don't have any drawbacks or dark ages or anything like that. They just keep plodding on with the stuff that Plato and Aristotle and Pythagoras and all these Greek minds and Roman minds came up with. And they come up with this rich philosophical tradition. They start discovering mathematical principles that we only rediscovered about like I don't know, like 1600 and something. And then uh,
yeah. I mean,
they
Arabic math is pretty much all that we follow.
Yeah,
The
the Arabic
the
numerals.
the deci system of tens
Hmm.
comes from that.
Well, they came pretty. I mean, like almost all the stars that were named before freaking 1800 have Arabic names because those guys invented telescopes in like 1100 or something like that, and we're looking at looking at the stars. And but anyways, then like somewhere around like 1500 or something, that something happened. I don't know what happened. It was like a brand of mysticism took over in Islam or
The
something.
Crusades.
The Crusades, maybe. I don't think those couldn't have affected
I
the
think
whole.
that was a little bit earlier. It was like 1300s probably.
Yeah, that couldn't have affected the whole Islamic world, though. The whole Islamic Empire world was huge. It stretched from China all the way over to like Morocco and shit like that in Western
Yeah,
Africa,
up into Spain
up into
in
Spain.
southern
Yeah, yeah,
Europe.
yeah.
Uh,
Romania, they were fighting
the
off the
Moors.
Muslims. But yeah, actually, so Aladdin, the Aladdin story. Yeah, the whole
Mm,
movie's got it all wrong. That was set in a Muslim colony
yeah,
in
Arabian
China.
Nights. All of Arabian Nights.
Yeah.
Uh,
But hey, speaking of Africa though, um have you ever heard have you ever heard of the Richart structure?
excuse me.
The Richart structure.
Is that where you shart yourself and then like you clench because you don't want to shart, but it's already come out and it ends up sucking it back in, and then you re-shart it again later?
That is exactly what it is
All
because
right.
it does look like a giant butthole from space.
I have not heard of this. This is good.
Okay, so nearby the town of Wadain in, oh man, Mauritania.
Mauritania. All right.
Um,
Let me look this up. What's it
this
called?
Richart structure,
Is it spelled
RICH.
actually like I think it is?
No, it's like
Oh,
French. RICHART structure.
that's okay. Oh, Rashad. Richard. All right. Oh man, that does look like a ball. Okay.
But do you see the concentric rings like the capital city of Atlantis was described in Plato?
Oh yeah, yeah. Look at that.
Right? It
How
even has
big is this?
it even has a channel running into it from what seems to be either a river or a giant lake nearby it. Isn't that
All
crazy?
right. And this is a natural, supposedly natural structure.
Yeah, it is supposed to be a natural, according to like geologists and stuff like that. I don't know how many have gotten out there. I have heard of a couple, mostly because most of my research was done on YouTube. A couple of YouTubers went out there on Jeeps and stuff, but you know, you can't do much before your water runs out. But
Yeah. I mean,
the
it's also 19 miles wide. So it's
I
a
know
vast
that's
area.
that's a city. That's a city.
That would be about city size. Yeah.
Yeah. So the town nearby is Wadane, and the buildings there, some of them go way, way, way back to Middle Ages, probably something like that. But they're made of the multicolored stones, like in Plato's account, and it got me thinking. So I looked a little deeper into this.
All right.
The Sahara Desert, 9,000 years ago, was a green, fertile,
Yes.
lake-filled,
Very
grassy,
lush.
lush place. And
Excuse me.
right past that area, I don't know how close because all I had was Google Maps to really try to guess here. And but it seemed close enough to be connected through a channel. There was an ancient river called the Tamanrasset River, which could have been. I mean, the river plain is massive. You can see the river plain of this river from space. If the whole floodplain was filled with water, the river would be miles wide. But I don't know if the whole floodplain was filled with water constantly or not. It could have drastically reduced over the years. I don't know. But this river just flowed right nearby this Wadane and Richart structure.
Hmm.
9,000 years ago, it was lush and green. So the landscape that Plato describes with elephants and all manner of beasts and all of this and a wealthy
A
city on a
venerable
plain,
Garden of Eden,
pretty
really.
much veritable Garden of Eden. Well, what if we were kind of talking about like either a genetic memory or a lasting oral tradition? What if some Greek or Egyptian guy just happened to get around there in like 10,000, 9,000 BC and happened to paddle on
See,
by and tell
see it in
his
its glory.
see it in its glory, and I mean he's seeing like a Stone Age structure,
Yeah.
and he's
Because
seeing.
there's no way that Plato or anybody at that time period that Plato would have wrote about this would have been able to recognize any sort of structure there,
Mm-mm.
especially with the concentric rings, making it look like the way that Atlantis looks. So if he was going to use this area
Hmm.
as a basis for his possibly fake city that he's making up,
Hmm.
he would have to be able to see it from space
He
in
gives
order to
super
see
he gives
the rings.
super precise measurements too, which are quite close to the measurements of the structure at Wadane, the Richart structure.
This is fascinating because I haven't heard of this, and I never actually knew that there was a theory of Atlantis based around this. And this is very, very interesting. I'm gonna have to do a lot more reading up on this. But
I just
wow,
really love this picture in my head of a Stone Age guy with a dugout canoe and a loincloth who got lost paddling along the shore, and he paddles up to this just structure like, what is this? And he gets back home eventually through all kinds of adventure, and he tells his son, dude, it was the best architecture I've ever seen. It was a city. I've never heard of such a thing. I grew up in a little hunting community, hunting mammoths in the caves. And then that goes to his son, and then his grandson, and then his great grandson, and it just goes through the generations all the way down to
yeah,
Plato.
every generation embellishing and bringing it
Oh yeah,
further and
because
further, and
he's describing Plato's describing like grand palaces and an acropolis and everything, but maybe that was his only way of imagining
yeah,
the way it was described to him, you know?
he's gonna base it off of what he knows at that time.
Yeah.
He's gonna base the buildings are gonna be indescribable over the years.
Mhm.
So he's going to base them off of buildings that he knows. And the
Mhm.
Greeks obviously using their pillars and whatnot. He's going to describe Greek-style buildings.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, no, that is perfectly plausible. And man, I thank you for bringing that one up because I've never heard of that. And oh, man, you're blowing my mind here, and I really need to like focus on that one some more. I have to look into more of this. And I don't know. It's like we've touched on this for 2 episodes now. And we don't have any more answers than what we had when we started. I think we're just getting more questions.
I might be able to offer something that might bring at least some sort of resolution to it. Um, as you know, I have been working my way through a second reading of Ignatius Loyola Donnelly's Atlantis book.
Yeah.
From the 1800s. Oh man, he does even more. He does what we touched on and more. He doesn't touch on the reshart structure. I don't think it had been yet observed at that point in time. But
That's what I'm saying. You pretty much have to see it from space in order to,
yeah,
or from the air at
or an
least.
airplane, yeah.
And they didn't have that ability.
None
at
of
that
those
time.
in 1816 or whatever he was writing in. But yeah, he touches on all sorts of things. He touches on dude, um, climate from the time. He touches on sunken islands and tsunamis. He connects it all up to there being this continent that was lost. But one of the great things he looks at is comparative mythology and
Mm.
something that shows up again and again and again across cultures. We've talked about it, flood myths. We've talked about it, the man did a no-no. We're gonna flood him out, right?
Yeah.
But one of the big things that just keeps coming up is these culture bringers, man doing a no-no, and a flood myth. Well, it's almost like the way that we'll use um, the fall of the Roman Empire nowadays. So we'll talk about
Okay.
like, man, everything's going to crap. You know, remember how it happened at the end of the fall of the Roman Empire. It's gonna happen. We all know it. We reference the Roman Empire, but
Yeah.
Atlantis was
No
kind of there.
civilization can make it.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
like we as Americans are fairly lucky that we've gone as long as we have.
Hmm.
But yeah, we're gonna ruin ourselves from the inside.
Oh yeah.
Well, every great civilization does if they're not invaded by another great civilization. That's history's doomed to repeat itself over and over and over again.
Or at least rhyme.
Yeah, and and that kind of brings me back to what I've been saying this whole episode is that we don't know how many times we've repeated this intellectual growth structure that we have. We could have been doing this every 2,000 years for the past, 100,000 years. We could have been rising up to the point that we are now and then collapsing and then rising up to that point. And it would just be an endless cycle that we keep going through.
Hmm.
When we just lose everything over the course of a good 10,000 years and then we come back again.
Hmm.
There's no real way to prove that is a possible theory, but there's no way to disprove it either. Like, I don't know. That's why I'm saying I think we just have more questions now than
Well,
really
you
before.
you can speak to it experientially, potentially.
You're just making up words now.
Experientially? What is the word I'm looking for? uh, so, um, myth being a shared, shall we call it a dream shared by an entire culture. When you find this many cultures that have the same motif showing up in their collective dream, in their collective
Yeah.
myth, one has to wonder if it's not maybe some sort of either description or of a mystical experience, or instructions on a mystical experience, or instructions for life, perhaps. Because look at your concept here, right? So everything you need to survive, food, shelter, all of these sorts of things are given to you by these culture bringers, culture bearers, right? The
Yeah.
people who came before you. So you could almost directly correlate that in a person's experience, in a person's own life, with their parents, their grandparents, their village that helped raise them, right? Or their
Nature
town, or
versus nurture.
yeah. So you could have all the advice on the nurture side. You could have all the advice being represented by one type of culture bearer. You could have all of the inherited traits on the nature side of things as culture bringers. Well, some point in your life you're going to run into a situation where either from outside with the chaotic shit that goes down in our lives, or from the inside with the chaotic insane psychological forces we got going on inside our heads, where
Yeah.
there is a flood, a deluge, and all that can be possibly no culture bring, none of your parents' advice, none of your grandparents' advice, none of your inherited traits can help carry you through, and you're reduced down to all that you used to be, and all that you had and built is reduced down to just like a germ of you, just the minimum required in Noah's little ark,
Yeah.
floating around in this chaos. And then the chaos starts to subside, and like Noah or Deucalion, you start rebuilding from scratch, rebuilding with good foundations, good principles that you came up with yourself, that you guide yourself. And you can use our analogy today with like the lawgiver. That would be
Yeah.
if you really start holding yourself to some principles, looking for what your principles that you got out of it were, that sort of thing. Uh, I don't know. What do you think about that little
I
pet
don't know.
hypothesis I have?
And it kind of fits in with mine. It puts us at the very end of a 6,000 year period
Hmm.
of when the earth would have been destroyed. Any sort of civilization prior to the Great Flood would have been destroyed. And any knowledge of any peoples or anything before that would have gone with it.
Hmm.
So we would have started over. And our knowledge of ancient culture really does go back to about the point in time that the Great Flood would have occurred.
Hmm.
So, yeah, there could have been some sort of cataclysmic event that caused civilization and human intelligence to decrease for a short amount of time and then start springing back into the culture that we know now. So we don't know anything that could have come prior to that or even prior to that one. And that goes along with my theory of we're just repeating endless cycles of raising our intelligence, our collective intelligence over the generations until we get to the point where we can't sustain ourselves anymore. And then there's some sort of cataclysmic event that launches us back to caveman time.
Hmm.
And then we start it all over again. And we have stories of that going back 6,000 years ago with Atlantis, with the Bible, and the many other civilizations that I can't think of at this time, all have some sort of cataclysmic event that jump-started their culture. So, yeah, I agree with you. Make a long story short, yes, I agree. And I also agree that we should probably wrap this one up. And
Oh
I
yeah.
do want to touch on this again in the future. But I think maybe our next episode we'll take a step back from this deep thinking that we have going on, and maybe focus on something a little bit lighter, maybe a little bit easier to digest, maybe.
Yeah.
And we'll come up with something that's going to be a little bit different. I don't know. We'll put our collective minds together and we'll come up with something good for you guys next time, so that we can kind of take a break from this topic, and then we'll come back and revisit this for sure.
I don't know if we'll be able to stay away from this one. Yeah.
No,
It's probably
it
going to
fascinates me.
pop up
So,
now and again.
Yeah, and I just don't want it to be the basis for our whole show. We're gonna lose
No, we're gonna diversify.
Yeah. So our next episode, plan on something just a little bit more digestible, a little bit easier for the brain to handle.
You want to do
mostly,
blue holes or
I think,
something?
for our sake. Yeah. Well, we'll come up with something. Well,
Cool.
It'll be funner. Not that I'm not having fun with this. I'm having tons of fun with this. I mean, I could talk about this all day long, but I know people don't want to listen to this all day long.
It is short on the funny.
So unfortunately, we're going to wrap this one up for today. We've been doing like a bi-weekly schedule lately. I've had personal reasons that have caused me to kind of have to do that. But I think now we can kind of come down to maybe more of a weekly schedule. I don't know if that's all right with you, Mike. That's up to you.
That'll work for me for a while.
So we can start getting more content out to you guys, and just really start to diversify our episodes, like you said before. So keep an eye out for that in the future. Yeah. Is there anything you wanna say or plug for yourself there, Mike, before we get on out of here?
Just get out there and research stuff. No matter what they say, just be like, I wonder what this is, and start with Google and go from there. I don't know.
Yeah, there's rabbit holes everywhere. That you
Oh,
can go
yeah.
down. In this day and age in the internet, you're going to come across stuff you've never even heard of before, and it's going to make your brain wander. Yeah, that's a good one, Mike. That's good. That's really good. Yeah, do that. If you really have a thirst for knowledge, there's so much out there. And so many fascinating and just odd stories coming from everywhere. So
Yep.
and that's what we're going to do a lot on this show. So
Well, hey, it's been an
Sweet.
awesome episode. Awesome sitting and chatting with you about this. We really got to geek out about this. I think probably both our favorites topics.
yeah, it's been a blast. I appreciate you hanging out with me as well, and all of our listeners out there. I appreciate you guys for coming in and listening to us blather on about things that we're never going to be able to answer. But that's the fun in it. That's the joy of these mysteries, is that they're never going to be solved, and they're always going to be mysteries. And you can always romanticize about it however you want to. It's just always going to be theories. So I'm going to quickly plug Snacking with Jack is my other podcast that I do. I'm still doing that one. I brought it back from the dead.
Zombie
And
podcast.
It's a zombie podcast, yeah.
Coming for your brains.
I have been joined by a new generation on that show, so it's very interesting. I have a kind of, I'm not sure if she's going to be like an actual co-host or not, but I'm joined by Peepus Jones on that show. So if you get a chance to go ahead and check that out, if you haven't already, go check it out. Snacking with Jack. It's nothing like this show. But yeah, I appreciate everybody for listening, tuning into us, and opening up their brain to these wild possibilities that we have going on out there. And I appreciate Mike for being here. Yeah, check us out. Check us out next time. We'll definitely be back. Good night.
Good night.
This has been a Snackin' production. Your hosts were Jack Sass and Mike Montross. Thanks for listening.